Mother 4, made under a mythical game engine curated from the bones of 25 rats. Coming winter 2014, except it won't because it's delayed. Oddity's development history has been quite a bit of a hobby of mine to investigate, since it's almost like every single time I go back to learning a bit more about this game, I always find a new bit of trivia or thing that is yet to be talked about. You know, for a game that produced nothing in the past 15 years, there are quite a lot of things left behind in the process. I guess my main obsession with this game is not so much the game itself, but more of the fact that I've been somewhat of a participant to the community when this rebrand was first announced. And I can still remember usually browsing through the subreddit every once in a while before my first class at 8 in the morning. It was either this or seeing whatever dumb shit was posted in the meme channel to see if it's the same 20 jokes about Neil C. Cierga. Now, I know that a game like Knuckle Sandwich took a long time to come out to an audience of people that spent the first couple of weeks trying to figure out what half the achievements are even asking for you to do, but to be honest, the only reason I found out that the game existed was because I accidentally thought that it was a Nailword album, and then I found it on Steam to my confusion. So, to make a long story short, Oddity was kind of, to me, what it probably felt like being a day one crowdfunder for those other indie games that took 5 years and you finally get to see it come out. Except, this game never came out. At least not within this decade. So I'm about to go full on rant for a second here, but I think this should probably be said because I do want this game to work out, but we also can't just be willingly blind to the problem at hand and give the team an out because they are indie developers. That's not fair to either the developers or the consumers to just let them continue doing the things that are causing them issues, from refusing to take on a crowdfund or other issues I'm going to talk about as well. That said, these objections should be taken with a grain of salt because I am not a developer. I'm just making statements from astute observations I've made throughout the last 4 years of this game's development. If you truly want to know why things are the way they are, your best shot is by asking the people who worked on it, instead of, YouTubers. Here's a timestamp if you don't care as well. I've been sitting on making another video about this because there's not even enough to talk about to warrant yet another doom and gloom power hour session with the 12 people that even understand what the fuck I'm talking about. But around the end of February, a post came out on Twitter lamenting the game that attracted a couple of ex-developers to open up about the development process prior to the rebrand that I haven't heard about. And it kinda made me think about a couple of things, like how I never really stopped to think if the idea of rebranding was in the best interest of the people that worked on this game. You have to remember that everyone on this project was voluntarily working on this game and only made it free in the first place because it was a fan project using a Nintendo IP that used community contributions to maintain their ability to keep it free. So imagine this, you worked on this passion project for a good 6 years on the side, but then the original lead developer handed off the work to someone else, and that guy handed it off to someone else, and in the potential fear of a DMCA takedown, despite there being several examples of fan games, translations, and other works deliberately using the mother IP that have yet to be hit with one, let alone there being an example of a mother game being taken down in the first place since Nintendo doesn't even own the IP, the original product you wanted to work on is now a full-scale development cycle for someone else's indie game. The circumstances kinda change at that point because you're not making some cognitive dissonance RPG maker clone game anymore. This is a full-scale ground-up indie developer startup, and the guy running the show isn't treating it like that because they want to keep a promise for a dead video game that was so well known for keeping promises. But that's not to say that the fact the game's not even out after all this time meant that nothing good came out of it. I mean, the community seemed to be just happy that the game is still alive and kicking, but that's not to say that the fact that the game's not even out yet after all this time meant that nothing good came out of it. I mean, the community seemed to be just happy that the game is still alive and kicking. The amount of work put into this has been astounding for a pro bono project that should have died 8 years ago, and there should be some kudos to the dedicated community behind it that have been keeping this game alive way longer than it should have been, which is something you can't really account for in a smaller scope of an indie developer. That's why it makes it so infuriating to see this team be given this rare second chance just to do the same things all over again. I mean, at least the 2013 build had a lead developer. I don't even know what's going on with the current guy, but it's gotten to a point where people are refusing to say his name out loud after his quiet break sometime back in November 2020 if I remember correctly. Now, I'm just gonna call it as I see it. The lead developer left his team to dry regardless of if it was unintentional. I'm so tired of pretending to think that he did it because of too much pressure or exhaustion for the long development. Hey lead developer, you're not the only one in your team that's feeling that pressure right now. You are a leader. Finding out how to relieve that pressure and remove what affects development to allow your team to perform at the best of their abilities is why you are given such an important role. I get that this may have been just a title thrown at you because Chase and Zephys couldn't handle the project anymore, But you can't just erase your entire existence from the platform so the internet can go at your volunteers' throats just to spare your own. You might not have realized this, but to anyone observing externally, your actions look extremely selfish. I want to be wrong about this. I want to think that you actually want this game to work out, and you didn't just abandon your coworkers, or there was some good reason for why you did it, or if you thought that doing it was in the best interest of the team. But given how I've seen nothing but bad stories about you from pretty much anyone talking about this discussion from that Twitter thread, I just don't agree that your choice was going to be in good faith. But whatever, there's already enough bickering about this game, and I've already gave my 2 cents about it like 2 years ago. I've already accepted what this game is. There's no point getting this upset anymore. I came to terms with what this project is now, and if it comes out, it comes out. Everyone celebrates, and they get all the streamers and YouTubers jerking them off about how this game is better than Call of Duty. If not, whatever. It's not like it's the first failed indie project out there. Into the pile it goes. I don't see any reason to be so damn gloomy about this anymore, so I want to talk about a really funny thing that happened 3 years ago that a couple of the community members might remember. So it's not a big surprise that this game this old is going to have a couple people that just despise this game's existence. Fortune definitely hated it, given that the game was leaked there. Some people hate what it's become, and it's pretty reasonable. But what if I told you there was someone who hated this game so much it makes everyone else pale in comparison to the amount of vitriol one man can have for a free video game? So, the interesting thing about this person is that this was a 5-year-old account, and he had a bit of a history behind it, so this wasn't some burner account. There was someone out there that actually went through the trouble of pulling this off. I did notice that his comment history also seems to be replying to specific people and obsessively replying to them until they get blocked, but his latest post was from a Reddit post on Internet Mysteries where someone pointed out that they are the only moderators for 2 other subreddits, one called FTTM in 2019, and in 2020 they moderated an urban contemporary art subreddit. So, to see an account like this make this either tells me that this was a legitimate account that got hijacked by someone that is impersonating the user, or they unironically did this to spite the game developers. And either way, that is the funniest shit ever, because someone out there was just so mad about this game they felt like they needed to go through this extent just to criticize it. So you might see the last post out there that reached post number 5817, and you might wonder, did they actually make 5817 posts making an incoherent babble about this video game? And after checking, yes, there are 5,817 goddamn posts made by this guy just to criticize a free video game that hasn't even come out yet. That's not to say that I haven't been openly critical of this game either. I mean, you just saw me openly criticize this game a couple minutes ago. But being able to know what led to the progress where we are today is what allowed me to get a better idea of what and why I don't like that particular thing that is done in my own words. But I had to find out this information in the first place, which is why I'm so lucky to have been investigating this around the prime time of 2021, because I found this big-ass Google Docs article that you can check out that shows every single factual documentation about anything and everything that is publicly released in relation to Mother 4, albeit it doesn't include the decompile leak, but we're gonna get there later. So this is a 233-page document that starts off with some fun facts about the game, like the time it was rumored by a statement by Shane Mesa that the Banjo-Kazooie composer was going to make a song for this game, or that a lot of the developers were big buddies with the Lisa the Painful developer, and they worked on some of the promotional artwork. I don't know exactly which promotional artworks they worked on, but here's a couple in case it is. I don't know. I don't do my fucking research. But anyway, with all the leaks that came out about this game, I think you should remember that there is a long-ass development time between the 2008 version, the 2013 version, and the 2020 version of this game. And to just say that they were working on the same game for 16 years feels a bit wrong. I would agree more that they were 3 separate projects, where it started as a ROM hack, then into a flagship title for the Carbine engine, and then finally into a new thing in its entirety using, if I remember, the Game Maker Studio engine. You probably wouldn't agree with me, but that's what I like to think. I also know that there was another Mother 4, and I think everyone just called it another Mother 4. And there's not really much else to talk about this game, because they are doing a headless development, so if they don't want to talk about their game, then I don't really have a reason to either. I have my theories about the team, but I don't think I'd be able to say them without some dumbass in the comment section actually trying to test that theory out. So instead, I will just wait for any information to come out, and then regardless of it being true, I will smugly present my esoteric prophecy to tell the non-believers in chat, I told you so. At the end of it all, Mother 4 was nothing more than a collage of ideas that were thrown at the wall, and the only thing we got out of it was some sprite work, an embarrassing display of all the work you put on, delicately written down to show just how little you actually got done that you wanted to work on, and a neat little soundtrack for a game that doesn't exist. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple people were going to get a bit angry that they were pretty much lied to, even if it's for a free video game. And I mean, can you really blame them? They don't know any of this information. They're not going to do their own research. Yeah, of course they're going to get super mad. They're uninformed. Like, as far as they're concerned, the only thing that they understand is game took a long time to come out and it didn't come out yet. Therefore, the developers are lazy. But as we all know, this is completely false. But that said, in my entire time with trying to explain the best way I can about this particular topic, where somehow everyone on YouTube knows the answer for this, yet game development isn't getting any easier wherever you work, there's definitely room for some criticism for the developers. But I don't think we actually ever established where criticism turns into the Oddity complaint letter. I think I've realized over time that we as consumers are never in a position to be giving our own opinions about abstract processes like game development. There is no one way to make software, and the way one developer outputs their work doesn't mean that the other should be following suit because of some artificial expectation of the right way to make a game. This doesn't take into account your resources, your funding, your team's experience, or even if your company even knows what the hell a scrum is. It's only when the process starts hurting the ones who build that work is when we reach a position that people can make. But we won't even really get to know that until a big article comes out that tells us the cost of making these sort of things. And suddenly, everyone on Twitter is an armchair computer scientist. People are really fucking cruel, and a lot of the time, they don't even realize that they are. My theory is that most people are so extremely apathetic to the things they are told and don't quite get the weight of the issue at hand. I mean, most people would only really need to go to a channel like Carl Jobs to get their fix on speedrun drama, for example, and when the video ends, they just move on, seemingly unaware that the issue didn't just go away. There are people in that community that still need to live with those consequences, and yet nothing was actually accomplished, because much like the reporter, the audience simply does not give a shit until it affects them personally. That was a lot of words. Also, we got a bit off track, so let's go back to making fun of the letter for a bit and wrap this up. Now, do I think the Oddity complaint letter is legitimate? Obviously not. You'd have to be a fool to take this at face value and to think that there is a point to be made from this. But maybe that was the point? Maybe? Let me try to explain. So on one hand, I think the complaint letter was a shitpost to get a rise out of people, but on the other hand, I think they did this to not just do it, but also looking at some of their replies from like their live discussion on the subreddit, it feels like they genuinely hate the game and they actually feel like there's a justification for their letter. The only way to figure that out is to ask the guy, but he kind of took their leave 3 years ago, so we're just stuck wondering what the hell was that all about. What was left behind though is kind of funny in retrospect because the commentary being said is just complete nonsense. Here, let me read you an excerpt from letter 3595.
I want to share some facts with you. These are hidden truths that affect us all. Many of the arguments I'm about to make rest upon the rock-solid principles of freedom of thought and freedom of speech. If it weren't for these freedoms, I wouldn't be allowed to tell you that I could go on for pages listing innumerable examples of Oddity's dour misdeeds and civitical beliefs. I have already written enough, surely, to convince you that Oddity has been trying to raise funds for scientific studies that prove that oligophrenic grizzlers and distasteful pea-brained blockheads should rule this country. This is what's called advocacy research, or junk science, because it's funded by muzzy-headed egotists who have already decided that Oddity has the mandate of heaven to desecrate religious objects. What that means, simply put, is that he who pays the piper calls the tune. This fucking script is stupid. With that in mind, I did a little research to find where Oddity gets its money. It turns out that it comes primarily from meretricious know-nothings, materialistic quacksalvers, and, you guessed it, unpleasant ninnies.
I also love that this guy's explanation for his criticism is that you also have to read the whole damn thing to understand it, so if you have a problem with it, it's because you didn't read it from the start, so your opinion is null and void now. So yeah, it's been 4 years now, and I wanted to talk about it since any discussion died with the subreddit going down. I figured that this could be a little bit of a time to go back and laugh at the dumb shit that happened. I figure anything's better than just making video after video getting super pissy about the state of the game. I don't see a point in trying to give out solutions for the team. They're adults. They should know enough how to make the choices that work for them. If I wanted to try to fix the industry, I'd be actually trying to fix it, not trying to tell others how to fix it for me. I kinda wasn't very truthful about this being just about the Oddity complaint letter. I mean, who the hell is gonna make a 10-minute video about a guy who makes a Bible's worth of complaints? That's ridiculous. But I must admit, I'm not very good at keeping promises.
Kaido-san.
I want to end this by asking, in the rare case someone who did work on this game does see this, if you were a developer on this game between the 2020 rebrand and now, I would love to get some insight of what the development was like after the rebrand, mainly out of necessity since we really know so little about the development after 2020. I'd prefer that you talk about what it was like working on the game during COVID, or your thoughts on the rebrand, or, you know, other like neat little things that you worked on during that process, like whatever formulas are worked on, or things that you found that were super cool. I don't really intend to do interviews this time around. I'd rather you discuss it however you like, whether or not it's even on this video, because it feels important to know anything about this development process so that we can hopefully learn from it. Also, shoutouts to PeachyMyAss16 for continuing to post fan art of the game until the very end. There was TV Head Pal for their work on the Carbine engine, and M4ME to try to restore the project as a solo developer. And I did also find out that they were also working on a Titanfall-based movement game. And the few out there that were still trying to keep the community moving along despite the circumstances.
Yes, I have to try.
What's wrong with you?
What this is, what this for, feel my fist push black holes through